That's not true because I actually work for Ray, and I work for our leadership and our members. So quickly, Katharine Pichardo is going to join us via Zoom. She tried her darndest to actually get out here. She was even trying to get a train at 6 o'clock this morning. So Katharine, if you can hear me, we're very grateful for all your efforts. Team, can we bring her up on the screen here? Ahí está. Beautiful as ever. So we're going to start with some opening remarks from Katharine, and then we'll do a little fireside chat with our two distinguished guests, Carlos and Robert Weissman, in a couple minutes. Katharine, I hand it off to you, dear.
Thank you so much, Juan, and my gratitude to LULAC and its phenomenal leadership and staff for inviting me to participate in this remarkable conference. Although I wish I was with all of you in person, the blizzard in New York really got the best of my travel plans. And so indeed, I am honored to be sharing this space with Carlos Eduardo Espina and Robert Weissman. Thank you for your work in the Latino community and in the progressive space. So very quickly, I'll share with you that families across the country, as we all know, are facing separation and fear under DHS's draconian mass deportation tactics. And our community's social fabric, which has contributed tremendously to this nation, is being torn. We're living under an administration that is implementing draconian policies up and down every agency. So it's not really a DHS issue. And certainly we feel it on the immigration front with Latino families and immigrant families that are hurting. But it's really across the board as families are facing rising costs and massive discontent with the way that our country is being run. So more important than ever, Latino Victory is doubling down on its mission to build Latino political power. And with that singular mission, we do it in a number of different ways. It's not just about our vote. It's about uplifting our community and our culture at a time when we feel under attack. It's really having those bipartisan conversations and voter engagement. So we bring along our entire community into this movement to build power. But it's also certainly talking about the issues that matter, from economic opportunity to immigration to housing and transportation and crime and safety in our communities, as well as the future of our planet and the impact of climate. So again, we focus on the Latino community, but we know that Latino voters are not a monolithic group. We are persuasion voters. And so those kitchen table issues are important as we continue to have those conversations. And yes, immigration matters. Polls show that a majority of Latinos don't agree with the Trump administration's mass deportation tactics. But as we move towards the 2026 midterm elections and we evaluate what happened in 2024, we know that the fundamental values of the Latino electorate didn't change. Our community still wants a strong economy and lower prices, opportunity, safety, dignity, and fairness. So again, I congratulate you for all the work that you're doing at LULAC. I congratulate my two panelists for continuing to fight this information and uplift our voices. We know that if we continue to hone in on the issues that matter to the Latino community, if we stay engaged between elections so that outreach doesn't just happen at campaign time, and if we continue to move past partisan politics to bring our entire community along to really elect fearless leaders who will fight for us. That's really the fundamental values that we need to hone in on in this moment. Latino Victory is playing a big role in that respect. Over our 10-year history, as you mentioned, founded by Eva Longoria, we've elected over 350 Latinos at all levels of government. So we'll continue to fight this cycle. And again, I miss not being there with you, but I'm there in spirit, and certainly will continue to work with you in the fight. Thank you so much.
Katharine, Thank you so much. We can't wait to be with you in community moving forward, and I hope you have a reprieve from the snow. Gracias.
I hope so too. Thank you.
And now we'll be joined by Carlos Eduardo Espina, but I want to take a moment. I know you all know him. He needs no introduction anywhere that he goes. Robert, he will be outshined a little bit just by Carlos's celebrity, if you will. But what I am most proud of is that Carlos started his journey as a scholarship recipient at LULAC. Here. His first trip to Washington, D.C., I believe, was as a LULAC scholarship recipient, like many of you in our LULAC Academy. He's turned that obviously into something significant that helps educate and inform our community. And he now has a platform, I'll say it, bigger than CNN, bigger than a lot of the largest media organizations actually out there. So he is a dear friend, he is a supporter, he is one of our best advocates in the community, and we're always lucky and privileged to have you. So thank you for making this trip and joining us as well. So with that, I will bring up Carlos, and I will bring up Robert Weissman from Public Citizen.
Is the mic on? Oh, it is on. Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing? Well, unfortunately, we're lonely up here because our other member got caught in the snow, but we were able to make it, so I'm hoping, we can have a great time. I'm really happy to be here, especially because, as Juan said, the first time I ever came to Washington, D.C. was back in 2016. I was a senior in high school. I remember it was either September or October because it was right before the 2016 election, and I came as part of a group, right, that we got to come to Capitol Hill and, be here for a bit. Maybe some of y'all have been part of that program, and yeah, that was many visits to DC before. Now I've been here probably like 50 times, but I always remember that first experience because I remember when I was in high school, growing up in College Station, Texas, when I came here, it was really impressive to see how everything worked in D.C. It was just so new to me, so, just so amazing, right? Growing up somewhere where you don't see these huge buildings and these people in suits, it was just really impressive to me, and that always sparked an interest in me, which then I took into college, studied political science, graduated in 2020, and then during the pandemic is when I started making content, and then well, here I am, 20-something million followers later. But like I said, every time LULAC invites me to anything, I'm just so grateful to come because in many ways, my interest in politics and everything that this world is started there. So I'm just really grateful to be here, and that's a little bit about myself.
So I'm here to be Carlos's sidekick. That's it.
That's it.
I'll give you a few quick things from me, and then we'll just sort of dive in. I guess we're just going to be chatting here. So 3 things that I wanted to communicate to you all. And maybe first just to say a couple words about what Public Citizen is for those of you who don't know. So we've been around for more than 50 years. We're an organization, we're a progressive organization, but nonpartisan. We were founded by Ralph Nader, if you know who that is. We do a lot of different kinds of things. We litigate, we organize, we lobby, and we're very proudly out front in the anti-authoritarian fight against this administration. So the 3 things that I wanted to say were, first, this has been a really bleak year. And one of the very few good things that's happened for us and for me personally is being in solidarity and collaboration with some old friends who we're getting closer to and also meeting new friends. And it's been an honor to be working with LULAC and with Juan and following Juan's leadership. And I think you know what kind of leadership you have in this organization, but just from the outside, I'm telling you how appreciated it is and how aggressive he's been in projecting out LULAC's vision and mission and the representation. And it's been great to develop this friendship, but also to benefit from the collaboration. The second thing I wanted to say was we're not an immigrant rights organization, but we're doing a lot on immigration issues now because I think this issue has broadened from beyond any kind of policy issue into a human issue and a democracy issue. And I'm with the communicator, so I'm the last person to be telling you this, but in DC, one of the things that the communicators are always telling the policy people is talk less about policy and talk more about stories. And I think this issue, as it's changed over the course of the last year and sort of the broad public perception has reflected that. It's the stories of people that have shifted views among people who were hostile on immigration to being much more sympathetic and empathetic. And I think one way you can see that is there's the divide between, I just saw polling last week on people's attitudes towards Trump and border policy and Trump and immigration. And I don't even know what the difference is between them, but people do think there's a difference. And they're quite positive on Trump's border policy. And I think that I interpret that to mean that's an abstraction. It just doesn't really mean anything about any individual or any identifiable persons. It's like this high-level policy thing, and people may have bad instincts, but it's just an abstraction. But immigration, which might have been an abstraction 15 months ago, is not. Now it's a personal story of a 5-year-old boy or a construction worker in Maryland or whatever's happening in your community that's been elevated in the local press. And I think that's been transformational and is really important for us as we think about work not just on immigration, but on all issues going forward. And the third thing to say is just echoing some of what Katharine said, and can you guys see from behind all the little words here? There's like kind of only sort of half shaded in.
Education, employment, housing.
Yeah. I think just the importance of talking about a broad agenda and Latino organizations and LULAC in particular being very assertive about an agenda that comes from your communities, but speaks broadly. Like housing is a Latino issue, but it's an American issue. Healthcare is a Latino issue, it's an American issue. Latinos are Americans, right? But it's everybody, right? And you don't have to feel like you're just speaking for the community. You could assert that the interests you're representing are the interests broadly felt, and that's true. And I think if the more groups like LULAC are doing that, you're going to find people are eager to follow, not just to sort of collaborate, but to follow your leadership. People are really eager for that. So it's a call towards being wherever you are, whether you're, a bunch of you are students, or wherever you are in the country, or whether you're doing DC policy, to be really assertive and unapologetic. And people are looking for the leadership that you can provide.
Oh, well, I don't know, Juan, if we're able to, because I don't really like to just speak to speak. I really want to know what people want to hear. I don't know if we can do like a bit of questions and stuff, and then we can have the conversation, because there's stuff I can talk about, but I want to talk about the stuff that y'all are interested in hearing in. I think that would be good for me.
Yes. So we've got a microphone, and so if you want to queue up, if you have any questions for Carlos or Robert, go ahead and come right here next to Andy, okay?
This was the first guy to raise his hand right here.
Can you come over here? Oh, sorry. And if you
He was
would
quick
like to
with
ask
it,
a
so we'll
question,
see.
Please come over. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Carlos.
Hello.
So, hi, everyone. I have a new job for you. There is a lost Latinos. Nobody know they were Latinos, but they are living, and I want you to take a look at them. Like maybe 3 months ago, a friend of mine invited me to LULAC, and he was right here. That's Dr. Ray. And as Haitian, I said, why do I have to do with LULAC? And Ray said, we are human, I love you, I love the Haitian people.
Yeah.
So you have to be here to support LULAC, to support the Haitian people. And do you know, 2 months ago, I did a little research. I found out Latinos are people from countries who speak 3 languages, the 3 Latin languages: Portuguese, Spanish, and French. Mm-hmm. So, Carlos, I have a new job for you. You have to take care of the Haitian people too, because they
Yeah.
have nobody to help them. Thank you.
Well, so it's actually really interesting you say that because it turns out I do have a good amount of followers from Haiti, and the reason this happened was so before coming to the United States, there's a lot of Haitian people who moved to Latin America, especially countries like Chile and other countries, and then eventually came to the United States. So when all the stuff with Haiti's TPS and all that, I was making videos in Spanish about it, but I would get people commenting and they're like, oh, thank you for supporting Haiti, but they'd be commenting in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. You know, I thought maybe, because the languages are similar, so I started looking into it. And it turns out there's a very big population of Haitians here in the United States who speak in Spanish. And I think that's really interesting. And it also just shows, how complex the immigration system is and immigration stories. Because I think a lot of what we see right now, it's like one face of it. Obviously, Latinos who look a certain way are the ones being, the majority, I guess, being persecuted, whatever. But I speak to people in detention centers all the time. And the other day I was in a detention center and I was like, hey, what are the nationalities here? And they were telling me there was over 80 nationalities in that one detention center, people from all over the world, not just Latin America, but Africa, Asia, etc. So I think it's really important to broaden the scope. And like you said, not just within the Latino communities to include people like Haitians, but also this is something that's impacting people all over. Look at Minnesota. The whole reason they went there was because of the Somali fraud and this and that, So this is something that's basically a frontal attack on anyone who doesn't look like Stephen Miller wants them to look like. And I think it's important that we recognize that and kind of broaden our narrative. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Carlos. Welcome to Washington, D.C., to LULAC. We met in Long Beach. I'm known to ask the hard questions, so here goes one. So we're having all these issues with this kidnapping and the detention centers and whatever, but there's a lot of hidden agendas. What do you think the hidden agendas are, and what do you recommend so we can get our nation back?
You can take this one and then
To both of you?
Yeah.
Whoever wants to answer, because it's an important question.
What do you mean by hidden agenda?
Well, the Epstein files, KKK, white supremacy, all of that put together. But I know they're trying to distract us and make us look focused, but what really should we be looking at? How do we get our nation back? Thank you.
So I don't think that the anti-immigration agenda is a hidden agenda. I think it's exactly what it seems. And it's a genuinely hateful agenda. I think there are two people in the White House who are serious policy people who are driving policy. One is Stephen Miller, and the other is this guy named Russ Vought. Do you know who he is? Russ Vought describes himself as a Christian nationalist, which means white nationalist. It's all the same thing. So I think that's not particularly Trump. Trump's happy to go for it, and he's mean and xenophobic and authoritarian. Doesn't have any real ideology, but they do, and they're driving it. And I think that's one thing that's going on. There is another thing that is going on that is not getting enough attention, and I think is connected in fundamental ways and requires more focus. And if we don't deal with that also, I think we risk sliding, even if we escape from Trump, sliding back into authoritarianism. And that is the unbelievable concentration of wealth that's going on. Focused on tech, but it's not just tech, but the degree to which I think we have a higher concentration of wealth in the country right now than we've had in all of American history at any point of the robber barons or anything like that. And the degree to which a very small slice of people are stealing from the rest of the population and actually really separating themselves from all of us and beginning to have overt hostility to democracy because they think that this very small, you can count them, number of people should be in charge. So I think there's this, while we're doing dealing with the violence of the authoritarian agenda, there's this other anti-oligopoly or anti-oligarchy agenda, anti-super rich agenda that we also have to be pushing. And if we don't if we let that one go, I risk that when we get past Trump, they're still in charge and it slides us back into the next demagogue to come forward.
I do think, maybe hidden agenda is not the way to say it, but I do think there is something, going on that people are now starting to realize that originally the stated goals of the administration were very, or at least the ones they stated publicly, were not really the real goals that they had. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people who, you even hear it in the Latino community, oh, yo pensé que solo iban por los criminales. I thought they would only go for the criminals, right? And their agenda has always been to expand the state's power, to have more federal agents, have more detention centers. Yes, on its face, to go after the worst of the worst, right, as Kristi Noem says, but it's not limited to that, and that was never their original goal. I mean, they're locking up journalists, they're locking up U.S. citizens. I mean, they're watching anyone on social media who talks bad about ICE agents and the Trump administration, so they've expanded their scope, and they're using this issue of immigration to, okay, yes, who's not against going after the worst of the worst and the rapists and the criminals, but that was never, who they're actually going for. So I think they have used the issue of immigration to expand their powers vastly. And unfortunately, people are realizing, like, hey, this was never really about, immigrants. This was a much bigger issue at hand. And now we're in a position to, I think, if we don't stop them in November electorally and, put some checks on the power the White House has, then we're going to go down an even worse path. But that's my theory on it. Next question.
Thank you. This is really exciting. I want to pose a question to you, something that I've been thinking about that I think is a missed opportunity that we should talk about. And it's, Jeanette Contreras, Executive Director of the Organization for Latino Health Advocacy. And so this came about because I have a partnership with USA Boxing, and we're engaging boxing youth and their families. Most of them they have limited English proficiency. The coaches, most of them predominantly Spanish speaking. And doing civic engagement with the youth and their families, I think, why aren't we engaging legal permanent residents in civic engagement, teaching them about we can still write a letter to Congress even though we are not eligible to vote. We can still sign a petition. We can do everything short of voting if you're a legal permanent resident, right? If we have a democracy, shouldn't it represent everybody, the residents of those communities? And so we know that get out the vote, efforts, they always want to find, okay, where are the eligible voters? But these legal permanent residents are raising U.S. citizen children in our public schools, and so they have to advocate for the rights of their children. They should be advocating for access to health care for their children, right? So I feel like, yes, maybe there's no money or there is maybe no political will to engage them, and for now, there definitely is some legitimate fear for coming out and signing a petition or putting your name out on something, right? But I feel like we should start thinking about this and saying, like, these are residents that have been in our communities for 30 plus years. Why are we not engaging them and doing civic engagement with them in a serious way?
Yeah, well, I think this is not just limited to permanent residents. It's also TPS holder, DACA recipients, and people who are just undocumented, right? And this is, I think, the reason I've had so much success on social media, because for so long, no one has really spoken, at least in a concentrated manner, to this community that you're saying can't vote, but they move a lot of votes. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, especially in states like Texas and other places. We are seeing there's a lot of like, how do we bring back the Latinos who voted for Trump? And I've always said the way forward is to engage those Latinos who didn't vote because they just maybe didn't care in 2024, but now they see their parents who are being persecuted, etc. And I get that message all the time, hey, I can't vote, but I have 2-3 children who can't vote. How can I register them to vote? And we're seeing that big shift of, this that's going on right now has activated a lot of people politically who maybe just don't care about politics. They're not conservative, they're not, progressive, they're not really any ideology, but they care about their parents, they care about their mom, their dad, their grandparents, and because of this issue, they're being activated politically. And I do think there needs to be a much more concentrated effort in messaging to these communities, because they are the ones that are going to make a difference, not just this November, but moving forward. I think there's a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old U.S. citizens who don't really care about politics, but if their mom says, hey, go vote because I'm being, persecuted by ICE, they're probably going to go and listen. So how do we message to them directly and concretely? And I think it's a winning strategy.
Hi there. First of all, thanks for coming out. I greatly appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. It's been a great event so far. And Carlos, this question is more so for you. So for context, I'm transgender. And so a big part, I think, Latino community and also the LGBTQ plus community, we've been experiencing a lot of the same thing where it's persecution by the Trump administration. And something I talk about a lot when I'm going through my story when I go tell people like, hey, here's why I'm transgender, here's sort of my life, I go and I explain my story to go and like build up that support. And so my question for you really is to go, how can we go build a coalition and really use storytelling to go and get people, especially like the midterms and the 2028 presidential election, how we use storytelling to go and really get people to come out and really support us. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think, one of the things is there's a lot, what this administration tries to do is divide people and make it seem like our issues are separate, but realizing that an attack on one community is an attack on all of them. And this is a very clear example that I had. I remember when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I made a video like, hey, this is not good. And I had a lot of my older, followers like, ay, Carlos, apoyas matar bebés, que no sé qué. Like, they were really attacking me for like, they were like, how can you support this stuff? And I was like, the legal underpinnings of this, like, you might be against the issue of abortion, but like, the day after, Greg Abbott said, oh, well, if states have the right, to decide on the issue of abortion, then we have the right to decide whether illegal alien children can go to school or not, something that the Supreme Court decided many years ago, that every child has a right to go to school. And then I made a video about that, and people are like, oh, yeah, maybe, this legal decision by the Supreme Court wasn't that good. And so this has been happening a lot with different issues, where they'll pick off like, oh, we're stripping the constitutional rights of, whether it's immigrants or whether it's transgender people or whatever group it may be. And then you have the other people like, okay, well, that's great because I don't like immigrants or I don't like transgender people or whatever. And then you realize that those rights that they took from them are also going to be taken from you. So I think highlighting those stories and realizing that when this administration is attacking one group of people, it's being expanded, as we talked about earlier, to embody a whole bigger group. And, it's not going to be limited to just these smaller groups. It's going to eventually end up, affecting all of us. And I think that's how you build coalitions and say, okay, let's fight back in whatever way we can.
I guess the only thing I would add, I was saying how important I think stories are, and endorse all of that. One of the things that we still have to invent is figuring out social media is real and it's important, but how we move, but it's not everything, right? And social media can feel like action. It's kind of action, but how you move to other kinds of action. And so how do we complement the social media and translate that energy from those stories into organizing in communities, whether it's, whether it's grassroots organizing or organizing in churches or whatever, to sort of really, because the number of likes you have is like it's a form of political power, but it's not that much. But when you have people actually doing stuff, then you actually are building a different kind of power that changes the political equation.
Thank you so much. And actually, thank you for opening up that question. And I know we're going to talk about this later. My name is Christopher Concepcion. I'm the state director for Virginia LULAC. And so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, thank you. And so actually, there's one thing that I wanted to bring, but also ask a question on it. So in Virginia, our strategy has really been coalition building, reaching across to different people from all groups, especially when it comes to the immigration space. One of the big things we've been advocating for is SB 783 and HB 1441, which a lot of people don't know, is an but a ban on any state agreements with immigration, right? It's something that we've passed. In Virginia, our power has not relatively come from the Latino community coming up and rising because we're all scared. Our power has come from the coalitions that we've built. For example, one of the orgs that we are a part of is the Virginia Coalition of Immigrant Rights. They are a 70-plus member nonprofit organizations from religious to different ethnicities and everything. And we've been able to get that passed at least through the legislature. And I would love to ask, going into the next phase, what steps and how important it is for us, especially as a Latino community, to coalition build. And I want to say not only, build outwardly, but also build inwardly, right? For example, in the United States, like Juan was saying before, we are so many different Latinos from different countries. Yet here in the States, so many see us as just one group, right? So then how do we make that unifying message where we are all kind of going under the same thing? We're all riding this journey together, and that as Latinos, LULAC, right, especially, needs to come together and also reach across the aisle to other groups.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned is so important, right? We talk a lot about building coalitions with other groups, but there's so much division within the Latino community itself, and I'll give a very clear example of how this ended up backfiring on everyone. One thing I would hear a lot during the 2024 election would be people who mostly are from Mexico and Central America would say, yes, I support Trump because I want him to deport all the Venezuelans. They all came here and they're all lazy and this and that. And I would tell people, well, look, you can think whatever you want of Venezuelans. I don't agree with it, but I don't think an ICE agent is going to stop you and be like, oh, you're Mexican? Okay, you can go. If you're Venezuelan, they're going to take you. And so people genuinely thought that. They were like, no, él solo va a sacar. I've been here for 20, 30 years. Yo nunca nada. And then what started happening, the first people they started taking weren't Venezuelans. They were Mexicans and Central Americans. And then that's what I started, I understand that there's a lot of division, and a lot of times, especially in the first generation, when you come from your home countries, we know there's a lot of divisions. I don't want to get into it. But we do have to make people and help people understand that here in the United States, especially as you mentioned, we're all seen as the same, and we get treated as the same by ICE, by Border Patrol, by the Trump administration. And the way, I guess, you kind of bring people around that is just constant messaging and, trying to educate the community. Because in many ways, we do have to realize that, the Latino community is very hardworking, is very dedicated, but we are also a community that in many aspects is ignorant, to say it that way. I mean, we haven't had, I guess, maybe a lot of times in our home countries, exposure to other nationalities, to other races, to other beliefs. And that doesn't mean we're bad people. It just means, hey, sometimes we have to have conversations about how things work here. And that's okay. So I think that's why we need, going back to this question of how do you message to this first generation of immigrants, not from a place of, oh, you're stupid and condescending. It's I understand you come from a background, or you come from a place where, maybe you believe this and that, but we can have a conversation on how to, be stronger together. And I think that way we will progress as a community. And until we do that, we're going to continue, being picked off by nationalities, and then all get screwed over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael Jimenez. I'm the Texas State LULAC Deputy Director of Young Adults. So, Carlos, hello. Robert, hello. My question goes for both of you, and it is very specific. So if you need me to clarify anything, let me know. But long story short, I understand today we've been talking a lot about policy, education, coalition building, storytelling. So my question is the following. As Latino first-gen master's in engineering, pursuing a thesis to do with medical engineering, so I'd be working in creating medical technologies, things I would use in hospital or in the field. I want to ask what highly technical, non-policy background people such as myself can do to help, because there are a lot of STEM majors in LULAC that want to contribute. But given that we're not from the policy background, our contribution would have to be pretty different, whether it's I can advise on the policy, but my contribution is not the policy itself. You know what I mean? That specifically is not my training. Perhaps do you think we maybe need more representation? Do we, as the STEM majors, need to be louder? Do we need to uplift and connect more opportunities? Could it be something as simple as, does the legal field perhaps need new innovations in the technologies you use in the courtroom? What kind of innovations can people from those technological backgrounds, regardless of the STEM field itself, do to help? And to say it more succinctly, what can I do to start generating immediate value to our community and our stakeholders today, not tomorrow, not in a week? What can we start doing now? Thank you.
I think that's a question for Juan. But I would say, there's different angles to that. If you say you just want to create something that's of value and use, I don't have any insight for you beyond what you know. But if you're saying, I'm interested in policy, but I'm not a policy person, how can I be useful? Well, if you're a technology person, you have a ton to say about a lot of different policies. So technology. Housing is a technology question. Employment is a technology question. Education is a technology question. Health is a technology question. That's all of them. That's all the substantive areas. There actually are really serious technology. There's a whole field now of technologists who are advising on policy. The whole space about what big tech is doing in AI and the targeting of Latinos and misleading information, whether it's political or commercial or disinformation or misleading health information. That alone, right? That requires massive numbers of people to engage, and that's just one thing off the top of my head. There's literally dozens of them. So I think that high value add if you're a technology person, as long as you're willing to sort of get into the policy space and work with people who kind of know how that field works.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here. Is this on? Mic on, guys? Sorry. So I have a technology background. I ran a technology company for over 20 years. I built the national voter file for the DNC, over 140 million registered and eligible voters with over 40 years of voting history. And so what I found was my passion of intersecting technology and public policy. And so I would definitely say that, you know, we are understaffed, we're under-resourced. The advances in technology and AI really create significant opportunities for us. I am so encouraged by you and other leaders like you at our youth councils and young leaders. We need to do better as an organization to give you more resources and more opportunities to do that, but I would welcome the opportunity to have that dialogue and to have that conversation.
And I was gonna make a note on the, the topic of representation. A lot of times we talk about, oh, we need more Latino representation. I'm not gonna say I think that's overrated. I just think it's like we don't fully understand what representation we actually need. Because, for example, you're from Texas. We have a Latino senator. Would you say, oh, we have a Latino senator, I feel so represented by Ted Cruz? Not necessarily, right? So I think we talk a lot about, it's not just about getting Latinos into these positions, but it's getting the right Latinos who don't forget where they come from and who actively challenge the systems that are in place. Not to say you have to challenge everything, because there's some systems that work, good. But in your area, for example, I don't know exactly, you were saying a lot of terms that I don't fully understand, and I think that's good, because it means we have people like you in places that I'm not in, that, most of us are not in. But I think for representation to matter, you have to constantly, one, be connected to your community. Because one of the things I see a lot of Latinos do is, they get a high degree and they get a good paying job, and then they get very distant from their community, which, I'm not saying, oh, you have to live in the same place you grew up forever, but it's always good to have that constant connection, because things are always evolving. And I think that happens a lot of politics. It happens in other areas too, where you kind of, I don't know, you remember the Latino community you grew up in, which is not really representative of where we're at right now. So having those constant conversations with people who might not be where you're at, but learning from them and applying that every day. But then also trying to open the door for other people who want to be where you're at. I think a lot of times we give ourselves too much credit. I think, yes, it's important, you worked hard to get where you're at, but the reality is a lot of us get to where we're at, in part because we've had opportunities that maybe other people didn't have, or we had a mentor who maybe changed our life, and so you can be that person for someone else. And I think there's probably a lot of Latinos who want to be where you're at as well, and so don't essentially, close the door for other people. Instead, use that position that you're in to bring other people in, and I think that's what real representation looks like.
Hello, and thank you for attending LULAC, Carlos and Robert. My name is Mark Sanchez. I'm from Northern Illinois University on the Chicago side. I'm here representing Ganas Tech, a company collaboration with Digital Leaders Now. We're a new cross-campus club, and basically my question was, knowing your success, Carlos, on social media, I wanted to know how you got to the point you are now, and then how I could leverage like business partnerships and make sure that I keep that constant relationship so that eventually we can reach like the national level, like LULAC, or clubs like Alpha.
All right, yeah, social media. I think, sometimes it's hard to explain, because like I didn't really try to be like, like very well known. I just started posting videos, and I think that really shows to like how the landscape has changed nowadays, in the sense of people think to be on social media, you have to have like be super prepared and have an expensive setup and, be like over, really polished and everything. And I think that's how it was before in traditional media. But nowadays in social media, it's just about, hey, if you're doing something that you think is cool, well, probably other people will think it's cool as well. So just record it, post it, and don't try to think things over too much. But more than anything, whatever your area is think about what can I give to my audience or to whoever may watch this that's of value to them. At the same time, making it engaging and entertaining. But, people really go on social media, yes, to distract themselves, but they love it when they can learn something, because they feel like their time on social media was not completely wasted. So if you can kind of disrupt the algorithm in a way, and between all, the dog videos and AI videos be something of use, I think people will recognize them. And then lastly, I think it's just, the consistency of it. For example, in my case, I post like 10, 15, 20 videos a day. Not saying you have to do the same thing, but, trying to be consistent as possible within whatever niche you decide to expand into. And, just think, if I'm interested interested in this, there's probably other people who are interested in it as well. So don't be afraid to post whatever it is that you're doing, and I'm sure you will find an audience for it.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Carlos. Hello, Robert. My name is Sergio. I am studying at Texas A&M University, so Carlos knows where I'm from. My main question is, I'm from Laredo, from the border region of Texas, and I have a lot of friends in the border region in all the cities. And where the Latinos are the majority, I've realized that there's a historic low voter turnout. In Laredo, we have a voter turnout of like between 10 or 15%. And in a city of 300,000 people, 300,000 people, around 30,000 people vote at most. So my main question is, why are Latinos not voting, and what can we do to change this low voter turnout, specifically in the border between the U.S. and Mexico?
You want to take this?
Give that one to me?
Oh, I can try to take it.
Off of you.
I think it's very complex because there's no general answer of like, this is the reason Latinos vote. I think it's an accumulation of things. I think one of them is that we still have a lot of people in our community who, for whatever reason, think that we just aren't part of this country. They're like, I hear it a lot. Why would I participate? I'm from Mexico, or I'm from wherever. Like, let people in the United States decide their own things. And so we need to change that mentality, especially among the older generation, and realize that, hey, if you've been here for 20, 30 years working hard, paying taxes, I think you've kind of earned your right to participate electorally. But I think beyond that, and this is we criticize a lot of times, like people, don't vote, don't participate. But a lot of times it comes down to that people feel like they have nothing to vote for or participate for. I think that's where it comes that we need to, someone here was saying earlier, get more people from our community actually running and being involved in politics. And that's how I feel people will get excited about candidates. It's hard for someone in Laredo maybe to get excited for a candidate who's never been to Laredo, who doesn't know what culture in Laredo is like, who doesn't know how to speak to people in Laredo. So I think part of it comes from having young leaders like people in here running for those kinds of offices. And then I think the final issue is just, going back to what we were saying in the earlier one, those of us who understand the importance of these things and voting and being politically engaged, we have a duty, we have a weight on our shoulders of sorts to help those who maybe don't see that and don't see that importance. I think that's the reason that 2024 ended up the way it did. There was a lot of people who, for whatever reason, thought, it doesn't matter who wins, life is going to be the same. And they're realizing life is not the same after Trump won. And so those of us who are able to see those things and get the privilege to come to Washington, D.C. and, see how things work, need to go back to our communities and be like, hey, this is why you should be voting. And the only way to really do that is reaching people where they're at, whether it's on social media, whether it's in person, getting involved politically. But I think it really does make a difference when you have someone like yourself. I don't know what percentage of people in Laredo have ever been to Washington, D.C., have ever been to a university, but I would say you are kind of among the few of your community who has that privilege. So going back to that community and saying, hey, this is what I've learned, this is what I've done, I think that will really motivate people to say, hey, well, if he did it and he's over there, then I can do it as well. And then that will lead to higher turnout all around.
I think the number one reason people don't vote, as you were saying, is they think it doesn't matter. And there's different versions of it doesn't matter. The two parties are the same. We have no influence. No one cares what we think. But that's whether it's Latinos or anyone else. And that reflects a lived reality. It's not like people are stupid. They're actually expressing themselves by not voting. So it's easy to be angry at the parties, particularly the Democratic Party, and say, well, you guys are stupid. Why don't you do better? Why don't you do outreach? Don't just do it at election time. And that's true. But you should forget about that, because I'm a lot older than a lot of people in this room. It's always been that way. I have no reason to think it's not going to be that way. So if you're looking for the Democratic Party to sort of find it to be your leader, you're going to be back here in 20 years and having this exact same conversation. So just give up on that. It has to be sort of driven from the ground up. And I do think there's a couple things. One is we have to drive an agenda that's not just about, say, not Trump, but also deals with this big problem that I'm talking about of concentrated corporate and super wealth power, because that's what people think, like, it makes no difference because they feel like the system is rigged. And if we have to show them it's not rigged by showing them that there's actually an alternative. The other last things to say is nothing is more effective in getting people to vote than in-person, one-on-one contact from someone you know. So the social media, but also the actual in-person. And that can feel like such a slog. It's one person at a time. How many people can I talk to? Yeah, if my 10 of my friends do it, that's more, but still, how many is it? Actually, that's the way it moves forward. And then also, simultaneously, sometimes things take leapfrog moments. And you can't create that. It just happens. But it happens on sort of based on the momentum of having done long, hard work, sometimes frustrating work for years in advance. So going back and talking to people, and you don't just sort of argue with them, but sort of try to show them a way why you think it matters, why there is a difference. I think that's the biggest thing for all of us to do.
All right, so we have, we're at time. We're at 12. Carlos, do you have a couple of minutes to just meet some of the folks afterwards?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, if they, I don't know, I wanted to answer their questions, whatever they may be.
Because I want to make sure everyone has a chance to have lunch, because it's ready for us, and then we're going to start promptly at 1:15. So 2 things. Point of privilege. We got some pictures here that we can share on the screens. So this is Carlos Eduardo's scholarship. We were able to find the certificate for his
September what?
2016.
So it was September, yeah.
September 2016. It's legitimate. We got an official seal. And we actually have one more photo that we can share. I'm going to embarrass you here a little bit, Carlos. And that is Carlos in our program guide from 2016. So you see how young, he's still young, right? He's still young. But that's how young he was. How old were you then?
That was senior year. I turned 18 in December, so I was 17 when I came.
Okay, wow, incredible. So, okay, so.
Juan.
Yes.
Where are my pictures?
I'm going to have to follow up on that. We might have to email that.
Well, I had a contentious exchange with your Senator Ted Cruz. You could put that one up last week. You put that one up.
Okay, so we'll take one more question from Aiden, okay? And then I want everyone to get their lunch, so go ahead, Aiden, please.
Hello. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice might be a little shot. But my name's Aiden Roach. I go to high school in Grand Prairie, Texas. I'm only 18 years old, and I'm the National Youth President for LULAC. And because we all know Latino voters swung, I believe, like approximately 30 points to the right in 2024. And discussion around immigration was just consistently negative. There were these fibers of division sown into our communities were caused by this haze from whether it be Fox News or any of these right-wing outlets. But I felt like a lot of that was allowed to proliferate due to just not adequate counter-messaging from the Democrats or from really any other big organization in that election cycle. So really my question is, how can we as LULAC members encourage either the Democratic establishment, other political parties, or the new progressive wing to adopt a very definitive counter to the immigration rhetoric from the Republicans?
Yeah, well, I would say is just going back to what we were saying, get as involved as possible. You know, I've done a lot of stuff with the Democratic Party, establishment, whatever you want to call it, met a lot of people. And I think one of the things that has been lost on our side of the movement is we have really lost the grassroots, you know, very, I guess, populist, if you want to call it, shaking people's hands, going to places, speaking to people. I think one of the things Democrats really failed at this past election is they just weren't hearing people's concerns. Going back to the question of Venezuela, like I said, I think we all need to be united and, you know, support each other. But I do think there is very valid for a Mexican guy who's been here for 25 years, never had any pathway to any sort of legalization. It's logical that he would feel frustrated when someone comes to the border and then gets a free hotel a week or two later in New York City. Not saying, oh, we should deport that person because they got a free hotel, but there is, you know, you have a right to be like, hey, I've been here for 20, 25 years, and that goes back to there's no definitive policy. What's going to be done for these people who have been here for so long? And I think that frustration builds up, and the narrative you would hear is, you know, you even see it right now. yes, ICE detained someone who's been here for 30 years, and that's messed up, and people are like, Trump is horrible, and it is horrible. But then the next question is, well, why, Trump hasn't been president for 30 years. Why does this person have no sort of legal protection to these things that are going on? So I think right now it's really being able to reach out to your members of Congress, Senate, wherever you may live, and putting pressure on them and say, hey, everything seems to show that the Democrats are going to win the House and potentially even the Senate, which would be very surprising and very positive. But if they go in and then they don't deliver anything or don't do any substantial change, then we're just going to go back to square one and we're going to end up with a Republican president in 2028. Because I think the majority of the Latino community, they want to change, but they don't want to change back to what things were before. And so how do we guide the party in that direction? And the way for that to happen is, like I said, you go and speak to people and you get these testimonies and bring them to people who maybe don't get out as much as they should from Washington, D.C. and try to change the narrative. So I think that's the way we move forward. And
yeah, I just think that's 100% right. And so that's what you just said. It's not just true for Latinos. It's true for the country, right? If the Democrats do what you just described and say, well, we're going to undo Trump and we'll go back to the way things were, then it is not going to work, right? There'll probably be a Republican in 2028, and if not, there'll be one in 2032, and there'll be one like Trump. Because the same conditions, why did Trump get elected? Because there are conditions that made it possible for him to be elected. They will be repeated. So the challenge for all of us is to push, and whether it's in the party or not focusing on the party, but just making clear what people want, that is the challenge. And it is exactly also true for immigration. There is an opening, the horror of this, and by the way, let me just say, before I finish this, because it's going to push people. Everyone, immigrant or not, in this time has to be real about actual physical threats and willingness and worries about security and willingness to take risk and assess for yourself. And no one has any right to judge anyone for saying, it's not safe for me. I have to be quiet. And that's particularly true, obviously. I'm telling you, you don't need me to tell you. Anyone who's Latino. But to the extent you're comfortable and safe and able to do it, speaking up now on immigration, whether it's directly to your members or it's on social, but being really assertive and unapologetic on this issue and the human stories to it, and demanding exactly as you were saying, we can't just go back. We don't want to go back to Obama or Biden policy. We need to go forward to something that's different. And that's true for immigration, and it's true for all of these issues. That's the key. And just want to encourage you, all of you, especially who are aiming to be the next Carlos, who are young, just to really lean in and be engaged. And you will find, I think, in a way that is different than would have been true even 10 years ago for you and certainly before, an eagerness to embrace your leadership, to not just hear your voice and amplify it, but to accept and embrace your leadership. And I don't just mean by others in the Latino community. I mean everyone in the country. So there's an opportunity to do the things that you think can be done, and it can be scary, but you actually can do it. And in the form of LULAC, I just want to end by saying this. You really have a remarkable organization with tremendous visionary leadership who wants to mentor new people, but also drive this thing forward in Washington, D.C. So you've raised exactly the challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, and I think this room is up for a meeting it.
So let's give another round of applause for our speakers, for Carlos and Robert. Thank you. And so lunch is right outside of those doors, and I will ask you to be mindful of time. If we can be back here at 1:15 seated, we have an incredible panel, 5 CEOs from some of our top partners, and then this afternoon we're going to talk about more litigation work with Ambassador Norm Eisen as well. So very excited. Thank you all. Enjoy, network, talk, get to meet somebody new, okay? Expand your network, and we'll be back here exactly at 1:15. Thank you.